Domino Thinking presents Natural Born Speakers with your host, Allison Donaghy. If you were born to talk and want to know how to build your career around it, then Natural Born Speakers is the show for you. Now grab your seat because this is the place to be. Now here is your host, Allison.
Hi, thanks for joining us. You're here on Natural Born Speakers, and my guest today is all about the grammar. And it's quite exciting. She's an editor, and I met her through a friend of mine, and she does some work for her, and I'm pleased to have her on the show. And her name is Corey Brownlee. And she's a homeschooling mother of two, age 16 and 14. Wow, that's got to be challenging. I can't wait to hear about that. That takes some patience, maybe. She was born and raised in Saskatchewan. Now, all of you non-Canadians out there, maybe even some of you Canadians, I'd like to hear you spell that. Her husband and her made the move to St. John's, New Brunswick in the fall of 2012. She started Prairie Girl editing 3 years ago as a way to use her love of English and grammar to make a little of extra money. Her top priority is her family, and most of the time she dedicates to them. But she's also a musician, an avid reader, and a movie lover. Oh, got to talk about some of our favorite movies because I'm one of those too. So let's welcome Corey Brownlee to the show. Hi, Corey.
Hi, how are you tonight?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah, so you're like on the totally opposite coast than me. I'm on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast.
Yeah, almost as far as east as you can go.
Yeah, like talk about extremes, and I'm almost as far west as we can go, at least on the island. But yeah,
Great.
So great to have you here. So how do you, just how did your journey go from like Saskatchewan to where you are, and from really being interested enough in grammar, which is like such a challenge, to want to do this as a living?
Well, the journey to St. John started out with the decision to homeschool our children. And that began mostly because, which is funny because it links into the grammar, small things at school, like my children are very grammar correct and in spelling and speaking and everything, because my husband and I are both huge into the English and everything, so we kept them that way. And they found that at school, many times their teachers were making spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. It did frustrate them, amongst other things. Mm-hmm. So we pulled them out of school and decided to homeschool. And since we did that, it meant I could no longer work as a teacher because I had to be home with them because they were only in grades 5 and 7 at the time. So then, living in Saskatchewan, that now, 20 years ago, Saskatchewan was the have-not province. Now it's a have province, which means that housing prices skyrocketed, and we really just couldn't afford to live there anymore in one salary. So we started looking around, and my husband said, "Hey, how about New Brunswick?" And I went, "Hey, no." He said, "No, really?" Yeah, I did. I said, "No." He said, "Well, how
no
about New
offense
Brunswick?"
to all those
really,
New Brunswickans, but...
Well, because that's a long way. Our entire family is in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So to come out to New Brunswick was terrifying.
I don't know about you, but I rarely think about the east coast of Canada. Like, I'm from Ontario, so that's kind of as far as I think.
Yeah, well, he wanted to be out here many years ago, and I said no, because we were having young children then.
Right.
So we looked at it, and we thought, we can afford it, and it's a new adventure for the kids, too.
Yeah.
And it felt right. So we, the whole thing, everything just felt right. And they said, come on out. He moved with his company. So everything he had a job and everything. Because you don't move out to a have-not province without a job.
Right.
Yeah, we made this long journey. And it was a very long, involved journey because we sold our house in Saskatchewan in June, but he couldn't move until October. So we lived in our trailer. We lived with his parents. It was kind of a long 4 months of pretty much being homeless until we finally got our house. But it has been absolutely the best thing we ever did.
Right.
It's been totally amazing.
That's really cool. And, I've always wanted to go out there. It's rarely on my radar. And because I've heard such beautiful, like people just say it's so beautiful and they love it out there.
It's absolutely gorgeous out here. Mm-hmm. And the house St. John is only 70,000 people.
Oh, wow.
It's a very small city, and yet has everything you need. But the home that we live in borders a forest.
Nice.
So yeah, we love, and
Very.
we're right on just off the bay as well. So.
So what are the biggest difference? I know we're totally digressing here, but this is just my curious mind at work. But what do you think is the biggest difference, like between Saskatchewan life and East Coast life?
The biggest difference, and we noticed it right away, is that the Saskatchewan is getting very frantic, kind of like what you would experience out in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And St. John especially, but New Brunswick as a whole, is a lot slower. Like if something starts at 5 o'clock, it's kind of 5:03, 5:08, kind of when everybody gets there, rather than got to get there and rush. It's a lot more calm.
Right, kind of like Vancouver Island.
Yeah, it could be. I have only been out there one time.
Oh yeah, well, pot's really popular here.
The people are so nice here too.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, and I think that has a part to maybe that slower pace. Although you know what, I find great people everywhere. I think I'm really lucky that way. Yeah, but it took a long time to get used to the slower pace coming from Toronto area to here. And here it's like, should we go to work today or should we smoke a fatty? It's like,
it's not quite that slow here, but
okay, yeah. No, it's slow. It can be. And Nanaimo's getting a lot better. It really is. But some of the neighboring islands, I think it's still very much that way. And I think coming from a place like Toronto, it will always feel that way to me.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But then my born here, and so he's more of a laid back kind of guy, and so I see the benefit of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, super cool. So how did you actually find out that like English was your shtick? Because like for me, even though I went to Italy and I taught English as a second language, I really don't know anything about grammar. And the students there knew way, way more than I did. So how did you do that?
Well, my husband is an English major from school when he was in university, and I taught reading language arts for two small kids, elementary school. So before we had kids, we would listen to little kids talk, and the grammar was so bad in the English, and it just kind of has always bugged us when people don't speak properly, like proper English, especially in a professional setting, or when there's mistakes on professional signs or in novels or whatever. So it's always kind of been at the back of our heads. But we've always raised our kids to speak proper English and to use the proper grammar and everything. In fact, I don't even teach them English lessons anymore other than literature. We don't have to do the grammar lessons.
Right.
And what happened was I've always been like this. And if you talk to my friend, our mutual friend, Anna, that's how I got into editing. Is she phoned me up. We connected after, 15 years of not having seen each other. And she was writing a book, her first book on public speaking. And she's like, you corrected my English so much in school. Could you do it for me now? It's true. All the way through till grade 8, she would come to me and I would help her with her making sure everything was spelled correctly. Not that she's not good at it. She's fabulous at it. Right. But when you're writing your own stuff, you miss it. So
it's so easy to do, yeah.
We won't even say how many years ago we did this. So when she gave me her book, I started just kind of going through it, and just originally for grammar and spelling. And then I started seeing, little things like, hey, I don't understand this. Hey, this doesn't make sense if you're duplicating yourself here. And then she said, you should really do this. Like, you should do this as your career, as you're brilliant at it. So I started just totally rewriting her books for her, and not rewriting, but editing, but editing content as well as just the grammar and the spelling. And eventually we've now gone through 4 books for her, and 3 or 4 other books that's friends of hers, and then it's grown that way. Right. And I've done fiction, I've done nonfiction, but a lot of nonfiction mostly right now.
Right. Well, and I just want a huge shout out to Anna too, because she is amazing. I had her as a guest on my show a little while ago, and I adore her. We keep trying to get together here on the island, but she's brilliant. She's so good at what she does, and that's one of the things that makes somebody smart, is that they're able to enlist in the help of people like you to keep them sounding and looking smart, and not having that impression of them diminished by not having that skill behind them, or that expertise that you would bring behind. So I can see how that would be a really brilliant pairing.
what we found as I've worked through with different people on different subjects in editing is that they're brilliant at their topic, and that's great. But just because you're brilliant at something doesn't mean you can explain it in a way that everyone can understand. So what I do bring to it is I'm the one who maybe knows nothing about your topic. Like when she started public speaking, I'm not a great public speaker. We did it all in school and everything, but I wouldn't call that my forte.
Right.
So when she started writing her books, I'm going, I don't understand what you mean by that. And so she was able to rewrite it to make it more accessible to everybody, not just the people who know what those buzzwords are or how this all works.
Right.
And I found that with all the not technical, but teaching books that I've done for editing. Because I don't know everything about everything. I'm learning. Something that's a benefit to this job is I read so many fascinating things, and I've learned so much because of these people who need some help with the grammar, the spelling, and the explainability.
Right. And I think it's so important being able to, and I don't want to say dumb it down because that sounds so insulting, and I personally, I think I can say it because I don't take offense when people say it to me. But if I'm learning something new, I want it to be dumbed down enough that I can feel like I'm learning it and not come out away going, wow, like I just did this thing and I came away going, oh my God, I don't get anything. Like my brain's going to explode. I feel like I'm stupid. And how do I get past that to learn? I'm probably never going to sort of broach that topic again because it felt so far out of my comfort zone and was presented in a way that I wasn't understanding.
Exactly. And as a teacher, and I taught elementary, I taught preschool, and I've taught my own kids. So I can teach my daughter one thing one way, and then my son can't understand it the same way because he thinks differently. So being able to use my teaching skills to help everybody to go, and you know what, you've explained it this way, but not everyone's going to understand that. Let's just look at it from this other angle and try and bring in some of the other people. So sometimes we'll encourage them to explain something a second or third time using a different example, using a different method, just to reach the broadest scope of learners, as broad as they can, because the broader your scope, the greater your readership and the greater your income. Yeah.
Well, and, when you say that, all I'm thinking about is conversations I've had with my son where he's like, yeah, you've repeated it twice. I didn't understand it the first time. And when you repeated it the second time, I still don't understand it. So maybe I just need you to interpret me for him.
Yeah, that's something that's been my biggest struggle homeschooling.
Oh, well, and how is that? Because, really, you're dealing with teenagers and with a big move. And I know I have some clients and they're not fond of their teenage children, let alone want to actually be spending all day with them, teaching them. And the teaching, I think, is such a challenging position because you're mom and sometimes teachers have a hard enough time with students that aren't their own. So how do you manage all that?
The first thing you have to do to separate, I'll use my son as an example. He's a delightful child. I love him to death. He's 14. He is an absolutely unique individual, and everyone loves it because he's just, he's very unique, which has been a joy of not being in public school because it didn't get crushed out of him. But there are times when, he'll say he hates math. The first thing I have to do is go, that's not me. He doesn't hate me. He doesn't hate my teaching. He hates the subject because he's struggling. So then the beautiful part about homeschooling is hey, close your book. We're going to walk away. Go take 10 minutes. Let's do English. Let's do science. Let's go do something else. We'll come back to math later when you're in a better mood. And we'll approach it a different way. Or one thing that really has been helpful is his sister will say, hey, here's how you do it. Here's how I learned it. I struggled with that too. So you really get the older student helping the younger student, which you don't get in a public system because everyone's at the same level. Yeah. But she can say, oh, I struggled with that too. Here's how I figured it out.
Well, and then the being able to teach reinforces to her, one, her value, and two, it cements what she already knows.
Oh, yes. And
so everybody wins.
They're both brilliant. My daughter is she's high achieving. She's going off to college in the fall, which is very sad for us. It's going to be another big event.
Wow, and young.
She's 16, yeah. She'll be 17 when she starts.
Yeah, so, my goodness. How old were they? Had they always been homeschooled, or when did that start?
Emily started in grade 8, and she did grade 8 and grade 9 in 1 year, which allowed her to graduate a year early. And
Right.
David started in grade 6, and he's going to go along at a regular pace because his interests are different.
Right.
She's just go, 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 go. How fast can I do this? How far can I go? And David just has so many varied interests that we slow him down a little bit because he doesn't even know which direction he wants yet, so we're exploring as much as we can with him.
Yeah,
Whereas
and
Emily,
that's
I'm going to do music, I'm going to do science, we're going to go. And she just, like a rocket.
She got it figured out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's got it in spades figured out. David, not so much, but he's a 14-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I want. Okay,
and they,
right.
I think and all of a sudden they catch up. Like,
yes.
At least that's been my experience, is that there seems to be sort of a gap between the genders, and then the gap closes.
Oh, yeah.
And they come about things so differently.
It's not that he's less intelligent than she is by any means.
Mm-hmm.
He just has so many things that are attracting him right now. Like, he's getting into theater, and so math isn't as important.
Right.
But, we just did our standardized tests, and he scored as high as he needed to, and higher. So we're happy with it. And now he's into theater. Getting into the literature is a lot easier because we're looking at it from a theater perspective instead of just Shakespeare.
Well, and it was, I know when my son was younger and he didn't care for math, my boyfriend at the time started playing poker with him.
Mm-hmm.
And cards, and we'd always played cards, but never in that sort of math sense. But he used to get him constructing like cribbage hands. And I'm like, what are you doing? But my son was totally into it because he likes puzzles. And so he turned it into a puzzle, and all of a sudden math made more sense to him, and he became really good at it.
Exactly. And we play games with our family all the time. Like, that's a standard. It's getting less frequent now that the kids are a bit older, but, every couple of weeks we have a games day where all we do is play board games.
Right. And that I did this program with and I always a young entrepreneur. I always say it wrong. Anyway, I did a program with this organization where I went to school and I taught students about something. And part of the course, the curriculum, was a board game. Mm-hmm. And I would say 80% of the students in that class had no concept of what a board game was.
Yes,
and I was blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
There's so many important skills to learn from board games.
Mm-hmm.
You think, oh, that's silly, but when you look at it, you get socialization, you have communication skills, and you've got critical thinking, not to mention being a good winner or loser.
Yeah.
But those have been things, and it also builds up a lot of family camaraderie. And that's probably why we love our kids, and we have so much fun with the kids, because we hang out with them all the time. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of away from them time because I do homeschool. I mean, I work outside the home part-time, but I'm still home most of the time with them, especially with a teenage son. He likes to sleep in.
Yeah,
so I get home from work, he's still in bed.
Yeah. Well, and it does, I think, give a whole different perspective when you do get to spend a lot of time with them. I know being self-employed, I missed out on a lot, but I was able to make priorities. I always went to the sport games that my son had, and, we'd go on trips together, and we would, so the time that we did spend together was really valued. And, but I feel blessed for that, because many of my counterparts working, regular jobs and shift work and all of that never had that. So what a gift that you're able to do that.
And I love it. I love my kids. I love my husband as well. We spend a lot of family time.
Oh, well, there's that.
Yeah. It's, like tonight, the kids are out they're at a computer class. So we do some outside schooling. So they go to a computer class and a drama group at the church. When they come home, we're going to finish a game we started 2 nights ago. It's still sitting on my table.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Right now, not much work getting done out there. And I also think that they learn a lot of life skills being homeschooled as well.
And that's huge. That's it's really a big deal. I know I'll hire some summer staff for my other company, and sometimes they just show up with this this lack of life skills, and it's shocking. Or I remember letting somebody go once because it just really wasn't a good fit, and they said, "You can't fire me. You're going to hurt my self-esteem." And I kind of went, well, then maybe you shouldn't have gotten your ass fired because.
Yeah.
But I thought that, like, they're adopting that language that they're fragile.
Yes.
And
it's not true.
No, it's not. Oh my goodness. Because we get some total powerhouses in, and I just think, wow, I don't know if I was doing that at that age, but that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah. We found that just through anecdotal things, because of course there's not a lot of studies on this, but that the kids that we've encountered that are homeschooled are a lot more confident in themselves.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to step out and follow their own path rather than following along. Like my son says, what they're doing is dumb. I'm not going to go do that. And, But he doesn't strive to be included. So he's less likely to go up drinking or getting involved in drugs because he's like, Mom, those are stupid things. So we're giving them their pure confidence in themselves and who they are. Like my son walks around in a sport coat and a hat and dress shoes, and he's 14. And people notice him, and they're going, that's pretty cool. My daughter mismatches her socks. She has colorful hair, and you'd love her leggings. She stands out because that's who she is.
Right.
So their confidence in it's going to give them so many giftings as they get older, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and considering that they had some earlier school years in the system, it's really great to hear that didn't, because it had to have had some impact, but that it hasn't been lasting.
No, we've been slowly working our way out of that.
Yeah.
Taking some time.
And, it's tough because, what other option is there? Not everybody can homeschool, and then it becomes this, what do you do? And because the system as it is no longer serving the need that it's supposed to be serving. And this is really interesting flux right now. So I have all sorts of ideas about how a great school could be run, but, alas, no time to make that happen. And grammar is such an important part. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy that when I talk to international people that they know our language better than we do.
It's true. It's not taught as much as it used to be.
Yeah.
It hurts.
And their use of vocabulary, all of that.
Yes. When you go to a school, and I used to substitute teach for several schools at the age when my kids were right around the time they quit school. And I would walk in, and I could not understand the notes the teachers left. Some of them. And you go, you're the teacher, and I cannot understand what you want me to teach this class. Mm-hmm. So that kind of
And they have such a huge impact on our kids. They really do. Like, when I think of some of the things that my son's teachers have said to him, I kind of go, whoa, like, that wasn't cool. And they're human, and they're going to make these, they're going to be tired. They're going to make these statements that probably they could have thought through a little bit better, and we're at the mercy of all of that for sure. And I remember my son coming home with papers, and this was like back in the day when MSN chat was happening, like before Facebook and that sort of thing, and that's where all those abbreviations started coming in. And he wrote an English paper and had like the U, like the letter U instead of Y-O-U, and C as in like the letter C instead of S-E-E. And I was blown away, and I said, what do you mean you got an A on this?
Oh, my.
It's an English paper. You're not writing in English.
There's places for that, for the text talk, and but it's not in, if you're promoting a business, if you're trying to write a book, that's not where it belongs. No. It belongs on the cell phone. Yeah. And leave it there, but it doesn't belong out in the world, especially when you think about, say, 100 years from now, people look back at what we wrote as a society, they're going to think we're stupid.
Well, except they're going to be on the other end of whatever this language is going to morph into. They're probably like, it's kind of like us looking back at Shakespeare, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
And going, oh, people talk like that?
To think about how far we've fallen in from the time of the amazing language that was used in Shakespeare. I'm actually really hoping that with a revival towards grammar and proper speech and proper analytical thinking, critical thinking, that we're going to go back to that. That's my hope. Because I see kids like my kids and the kids that are homeschool group, the people that we are around, we're all building back towards that. towards children using proper language and not using the text talk and using proper grammar, as well as using the words to say what we mean instead of just using images like Snapchat. Just use real words and talk about it. And so we encourage our kids to talk a lot. And our kids are involved in dramas where they're encouraged to use proper words because you have to communicate to a large group. So those are all the ways that we incorporate our English. And I'm really hoping through some of the blog posts that I've made, I haven't made any for a while, but I plan to get back to that, promoting just the use of English language, which has some beautiful things that we can say with it, to communicate with everyone instead of just using images, which can be misinterpreted, whereas words cannot be if you structure them properly, format them properly, and, use proper spelling. You can communicate some incredible ideas. My son has actually said to me once, said, Mom, why do I have to learn how to compose, like to write prose? Mom, I'm going to be an engineer. I don't have to learn how to write. Yes, honey, you do, because when you invent something, because he's got lots of ideas on things he wants to invent, you have to explain that to somebody else. Yes. You're going to have to write that down.
Yes.
Like he gets
and somebody
English,
said something to me, too, about it, where there was a woman, she was an engineer, was she? And the people that came into her class, she made them write proper English, and they used to get really upset with her. And she goes, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are if nobody understands. Oh, I wish I could remember who that was, but it's totally what you're just saying. It makes absolute sense. And people can actually check out your blog, because I'm assuming it's on your website.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, at prairiegirlediting.com. That's prairiegirlediting.com. Cool. So they can go there, not right now because you're listening to the show, but you can go there after. You can see what some of these blogs are and see if they resonate with you. And you can also see there about how maybe to work with Corey, right?
Yes, and I do talk about my kids a lot on there, so there's some homeschooling.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think nobody's going to love our children as much as we do, so I think we need to prop them up and say as many good things as possible whenever the opportunity arises.
Yeah, although for them it's better if they don't know. They're pretty shy in a way, that way.
Well, they might not want to listen to this then.
No, they probably won't when I talk about them.
Yeah. So, but okay, if the language has changed from, Old English, Shakespearean type styles to where we are today to this text slang, why is it that you think grammar is important?
Well, the text slang, I've tried to understand a lot of the text talk, but you've got these great generation gaps. We have the people like my mother who will not use technology. She does not have she has a cell phone, but she only has the old flip phone with the buttons. So she doesn't text. She doesn't have an email address. She does not have the internet. She doesn't even know what the internet is. And she's only 70. She's not even that old. And then you've got my children who my daughter has her first cell phone. They've got iPods. They talk over Skype. They talk over text talk all the time. But you have to see a way for them to communicate with that other generation, and for that generation to be able to communicate back to them. So the proper grammar and spelling is that basis for the communication, because my mother will write letters to my children, and they write letters back, but they can't use text talk with grandma because she won't understand a word they're saying. Or with great-grandma, who's 90, you say any of these text abbreviations now, she won't have a clue what you're talking about.
Right.
So this is why the proper grammar is always going to be important, because otherwise we're going to lose our generations. We won't have that communication amongst the various ages. And when you go out in the world, you don't just hang out with people your own age.
Yeah.
I work at, I have a part-time job at Starbucks. I am a 44-year-old mother of two. I am twice as old as everybody else in that building.
Right.
So if I go in there not knowing any text talk, and they only know text talk, it's going to be a really awkward situation. But because that proper English will allow all of us to communicate on all the levels, they can educate me on some of the new terminology. I know most of it, but, they're 22, they're 19.
Right.
And they can still understand all the things that I have to impart to them. So that's why I think it's always going to be important, and why we always need to keep pushing that proper maybe not always formal language, but proper sentence structure, and not just one word here, one word there, but a full and complete communication system.
Yeah. Yeah, as an adult, I definitely see the value in all of that. And I think younger people, they see the value when they bump up and they need to see the value. And I think it would be helpful for them to learn that value sooner instead of being in a situation where they now have so many bad habits. Like my son, bless his heart, love him to bits, and he's brilliant in so many ways. But he'll say something to me and I'll answer it and he'll go, that didn't answer my question. I'm like, actually, that totally answered your question. And he's like, well, no, what I meant to say was this. And I'm like, yeah, but you didn't say that. Exactly. So this is the answer you're getting based on what it is that you asked me.
Yeah, and that's another reason why we need to, in schools, they need to really work more on the English and focusing on conversation. You know, we talk, I don't know how much French you guys do out there. New Brunswick is a bilingual province, which is not a good thing for me because I'm from Saskatchewan. We don't do a lot of French. But we talk about conversational French versus proper formal French. And it's the same thing with English. We need to have good conversational English for that conversation, for the, the intergenerational things. But when you're going into writing of books, you do need to have some formality of English. So that it can be understood, especially when you start looking at translating it into different languages. Some of the words that we use in English do not translate well to French, especially if it's a slang term. They have no idea, and you can't explain it, no matter what you do, no matter how loud you yell at those people. That word does not come across.
Right. Well, and even the French in Canada compared to the French in France, I know when I went there, people were looking at me because I'm definitely not bilingual, but I have enough education that I can sort of put a sentence together. And they kind of look at me like, yeah, do you want to try English? And I'm like, yes, that'd be so much better.
Exactly.
But there's still that, it's that difference around the world with same languages. Yes.
And English has become such a language that the majority of the world does understand it. Not everyone, but a good portion have a good smattering of it. We have a very dear friend who is German, and he has fairly decent English, but, he's much better in German. His daughter will explain things in German when it gets really awkward between all of us. But he can't handle the slang terms and all those text talk, but he can handle the formality. So that's another reason that formal language of English, learning the proper art of conversation and the proper way, grammar and structure and all of that for your speaking comes across, because when you do try and start crossing that language barrier, they learn the formal English. So if you don't speak the formal English, you're still speaking two different languages.
Right.
When we try and play a board game with him, he's a delightful man. I love him to death. But every so often, he just can't grasp the concept, because it's become almost a slang within the term of the game. Yeah. So again, that all comes back to proper English. And even explaining a board game to a new person, if you don't have good command of the English language, you're never going to get that concept across.
Yeah. Well, and especially giving instruction and that sort of thing, that gets very, very. You have to be so specific. Yeah, there's a drinking game that we play, and we try to explain it to people, but we just have to play it, and then they understand it. Sometimes, but when you're writing a book, you don't have that chance to, take them around the table and show them how to play the game. But so why would, as an editor, how would you help a speaker? Like, in what ways would you?
Like a public speaker?
Yeah.
Many public speakers do begin with outlines and writing out their speeches in a form, not a complete form, obviously. If you've read Anna's books, she likes to speak from a template. But the form of a speech still follows proper English. You're still starting from a series of concepts and how to explain those concepts. So as an editor, if I have a paragraph that they know they want to speak about, then I can encourage them with proper words that might explain that concept a little better. Especially if somebody speaks to me, like I've listened to a few of Anna's speeches, and I can sit there and go, okay, your grammar is good, but that concept was still a little too high. Let's look at using this to re-explain that a little bit. The same with looking at your outline. If you've got your 3 topics and you go down to your 3 subpoints, some people, I can help them with going into those 3 subpoints and going, okay, those are good subpoints, but you're still missing getting back into your main concept because you're still using it a little too close to that first concept instead of really breaking it down.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're talking you're talking about football and you start using all the jargon, well, you need to be able to explain the jargon. You can't just say, okay, we're going to talk about the slot back. Well, what's a slot back? And if you can't explain that, whether it's written or orally, it all comes back to actually the same skills. I have to listen harder when it's somebody speaking rather than looking at paper and going, okay, so I can see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
and I guess at least if it's in a book, you can put it down, Google it, or pull out a dictionary or ask somebody next to you, what does this mean? And then go back to reading. When you're speaking, not that that's an enjoyable way to read because that would drive me nuts and I'd throw the book away. But even with like the speaking, you don't have that opportunity as an audience member to push pause, ask the person next to you what it meant without missing another section. Like you can ask, but then you're going to be upsetting everybody around you because you're talking. So
exactly.
Mm-hmm. And what about like segueing from one topic to another or one point to another? Do you work with that as well?
Mostly in the written communication, like in books, yes. We work from moving from chapter to chapter, depending on the type of book that you've written. Like if it's a novel, that's a little bit different because you can make the abrupt change in a novel. All of a sudden, bam, you're in a whole different country. Mm-hmm. But with a teaching book, like we'll go back to Anna's books because I have most experience with hers. I've done 4 of hers.
Right.
So you leave from chapter to chapter, and what I've tried to do help her with hers is to flow naturally from chapter to chapter. So if you're talking about the way you stand physically as a speaker, and then you all of a sudden go into talking about your microphone. Okay, well, I feel like I've missed a step. I feel like you've just dropped me off a cliff there. Let's go with standing, and then let's go with more of the presentation space, and then let's move into our technology, rather than just jumping straight from one to the next.
Right.
We work with flow and making it flow naturally to what I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does to me. I think you explained it well.
Everybody else.
Well, and we can't ask them, so we're just going to go with a big yes. That made total sense.
Okay.
Because, I get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And even with bios as well, like those are a tricky thing for people to write.
They are very tricky because you want to give so much information. Like even when I write my own, I'm looking at it going, there's so much that I want to say, but I can't say everything. So you have to look at the words you choose. Like I can choose the word homeschooling mother of 2, and that tells you a lot about me. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I just say, I have 2 teenagers, that doesn't tell you nearly as much.
Or if you say, well, I had these 2 kids, and this is their age, and these are their names, and this is what we do. Oh, they were in the school system, and now I'm homeschooling. Like, really, it's people start to yawn.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why usually I start with homeschooling mother of 2, happily married 4. And then you know a lot about my life right there in those tiny, small sentences, rather than like paragraph and paragraph, and people are wading through finding what's really important. So it's all about when you're writing a bio, it's finding what's the really important piece of information, what do you really need to get out to everybody. Mm-hmm. And, okay, so right now,
how do you bring out those strengths without making it sound not good enough or too good, or like how to accurately express your accomplishments?
I usually when I have an editor or a person who wants to write a bio, I have them write me out like 3 or 4 pages. And then I highlight what I feel was the most important parts in there, send it back to them, and they can agree or disagree, and then we just bring that right down. Right. Because you can always reference later. Mm-hmm. People want more information. They can say, okay, you've written 4 books. What were those 4 books? Rather than saying, here's the 4 books I wrote. Right. I've written 4 books. Or I've written 4 books on public speaking if you're Anna. Right. Or all of that, right? Like, it's, or several books or whatever. But you don't need to give all the immediate details. You need to give a little bit that's going to pique an interest. So that they're going to click a link. They're going to follow up and say, hey, what were those books? Or, hey, you said you're a homeschooling mom. What does that mean? Right? Like that's that kind of a thing. You want to pick the words that are going to pique an interest rather than people going, oh, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So if somebody needed a bio, let's just stick with that because I know there's obviously different levels of stuff, but a bio, everybody kind of understands what a bio should look like, more or less, like how big it is, what you'd use it for. So what would that process be if somebody wanted to hire you to do a bio? How long would it take? You've already said that they need a few pages of back material. And then how long would it take for a turnaround? And then what would something like that cost? If you're comfortable discussing that.
Okay, so a bio, I would start out with, like I said, asking, first off, what is a bio going to be used for? Because that makes a difference. Is it going in the back of a book? Because that's a little bit shorter than, say, on your website. So the website, we can go into a little bit more detail. You have more space. Back of a book, you have to really pull it down even further. But what I do is I start with, I have some questions I ask. I like to get to know my clients, like, are you married? Where do you live? Were you born there? What's your favorite color? Not quite what's your favorite color, but, all these questions, get to know them. Then I ask them to write out a little bit of story about themselves. And then I go through and I pick out what I think, to me, is going to be the most relevant to what the topic is. Because there's, like, I could talk about my music and everything else, but for my own personal bio as an editor, some of that stuff isn't quite as important. It's color, but depending on your space, you can't use it. So we'll start with those 3 or 4 pages. I'll go back highlighting what I think is important. I'll write them down to about a paragraph and a couple of paragraphs, bring it down to less than a page, send it back. I can usually do a turnaround on that in less than 24 hours, depending on the date. I always say 48, and it's usually 24, under promise, over produce, right?
Over deliver, yeah.
And over deliver. And then it's something like a bio, since it really only takes me, honestly, about an hour and a half of work time, it's about $25 to $30. It's really not bad. And then you would have your perfect grammar. Everything would be perfectly organized. And that includes going back 10, 12 times if you want. I don't charge by the hour when it comes into something like a specific project.
Right.
Like, okay, we want to get this bio perfect. Let's go back and forth. Here's my ideas. You don't like that? Okay, you want more information? Okay. In fact, I just did a website for a company in Winnipeg, and we did that. It took us about a week to go back and forth because they said, okay, we need a bio page. Tell me about yourself because I don't know who you are. So then they gave me all their information. I sent it back. It took us about a week, I think, to finally get all the pages, and that was about 10 emails a day. Back and forth, just changing little words here and there, and they wanted to go this direction or whatever. So there's a lot of communication between me and any author that I work with.
Right.
Because I need to understand who you are rather than just think, okay, this is what I think it should look like, but I'm not you. You've got a different personality. Your personality needs to come through, not mine. I have to, it's almost like a ghostwriter. I have to pretend to be you.
Right.
I have to know
Is that
you.
why you get them to write out paragraph about themselves so that you sort of start to understand their voice?
Yes, I understand their voice, the way they speak, and the information that seems important, that is important to them.
Right.
And to, like, if I was to write a bio on you, I'd need to know more. I know you do a radio show, but what other interests do you have that might also attract other readers to come in from outside? Somebody who might go, that's why I would say homeschooling. So people look at editing. Oh, it's just editing. Oh, homeschooling. Oh, wait. Hey, I know people who homeschool. So those little tidbits can help to draw in other people from outside of your normal sphere of influence.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, and I'm guessing, I'm usually good at guessing, but not always, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But if somebody is interested in enough to get a professional bio done, there must be value in sticking with one person. So if they come to you for their bio, then you can also do their bio on their website, and you can also do their jacket on their cover, and you can, because by that time you would really have a sense of who they are and what was important, and then just becomes so much simpler.
It really does. And then you can use a lot of the same material, and especially if you start with a bio on a book, the bio on the website just builds upon that, or vice versa. You start with the bio on the website, and then by then I've learned what exactly needs to go in that book, on the back of that book, or on a one-page handout. If you're going to a networking event, that's a whole different animal as well. Like, okay, networking. Okay, now we need different information on that.
Right.
So getting to know as much as I can about the author really helps me in editing a book, a bio, or writing a networking page.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then it becomes simpler. So if somebody just phones you up and says, hey, I need this, you already know so much. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, excellent. That is so cool. So being a homeschool mom, though, how does that help or hinder your editing business?
It helps in a way because I've got 2 kids sitting at home who I can bounce little sentences off. I don't share, I sign non-disclosure, and I'm good about that, but I can say, this sentence doesn't make sense to my ear. Something feels off.
Right.
Or, hey, this paragraph, how would you guys say that? And they read different types of books than I do. They have different interests. So then my daughter especially is very good at it, and she'll say, hey, Mom, why don't you try this word? No,
right.
That's a good idea. Or after I've looked at the page for so long sometimes, like I can't get it, I can just throw out a sentence to the family at large, and there's always somebody in the house. The kids are always here. Hey, David, what do you think about this idea? And he's like, no, that sounds kind of dumb, Mom. Okay, I won't use it then.
So cool.
So they become like...
Well, and it's that generation thing too, right? So you're speaking to, you're including that broader audience. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they also go, Mom, that's from this movie. Oh, yeah, that's awkward now. I've done that.
Yeah, there's that. Oh, man.
Mom, that's from a movie.
We didn't even get to talk about movies, and our time's almost up here. So we'll have to save movies for another conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just want to point out, though, that people can reach you at prairiegirlediting.com. And is that the best place to them? They can just contact you on the contact page and get more information?
Yeah, that's the best place because it goes straight to my home email. And being as busy and being that I'm on the East Coast, phone calls are never a good thing because right now for me it is 7:35. Like it's 4 hours later than it is for you. So it makes such a huge difference that this way I communicate. Actually, I have a client in Chicago who loves the time difference. She sends her work she likes to work till 2 or 3 in the morning. I get it. I get up. I have it back before she's out of bed.
Yeah, that's kind of handy.
Loves it. She's like, this is brilliant.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Well, I think this has been absolutely a great experience talking to you all about the homeschooling and then the editing and the value of it and having just a grammar conversation. And I just really want to thank you for your time. It's been a really interesting show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Anytime. And I would also like to thank Nesha, our producer, who's always so good at keeping me on track. I adore you. Thank you. And until next Thursday, speak up because you have something to say and I want to hear it.
Thanks for hanging out with Natural Born Speakers. But don't stop now. Contact Allison with questions to be a guest or hire her as a speaker. Go to dominothinking.com. See you same place and time next week.